we saying?
Yes. Okay. We're going to go ahead and get started. So this is Kimberly. She is out of the Coppell office. She's a productivity coach, and she has been kind enough to grace us today to do the listing class. And she brought a friend, Tara. Tara. And you're a new agent, correct?
Newer, a little over a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, I appreciate you guys coming, taking time out of your day. And
yeah, absolutely.
We've got people online, and we've got some people in the office. So I'll let you get going.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
When I asked Jill what she wanted us to talk about, listings was the hot topic for everybody. I know that listings right now is more than ever one of the most important parts of our business that we can be focusing on. And so listings, of course, give us leverage, but listings also give us business right now. Can we all agree?
Yeah. Yes.
It is a challenge, although not impossible to work with buyers. So I'm Kimberly Boales. This is Tara Townley. Tara has been in the business, and I'll let her talk about, go ahead and hit the button. Maybe?
The mouse and then, yeah.
There we go. Is it gonna work? Okay, there we go. Tara has been in the business for a year before I got here, and then she jumped into our accelerated coaching. And I thought, what a better person to come talk about listings as a newer agent and share kind of what she's experiencing, as well as to give perspective from the buyer side in this conversation, because I think that that's important more than ever in this market right now. So I am a productivity coach. I've been coaching for about 5 years now. I've been an individual agent for 7 years, going on 8. My personal business, I've closed over 185 units. And so I've also been in real estate with Keller Williams for those 7 years. So that's kind of my background. Everybody always talks about, especially in Ignite, why do you do what you do? And at the end of the day, it's for this one over here and my husband, so that finances are never a reason to say no to anything, that we help other people. And in doing that, we help, have the big life that we want as well. So Tara.
So my name's Tara. I've been in the business, like Kimberly said, about 1.5 years. My first year, I didn't close my first transaction until about 9 months in. And then starting this year, my business has really exploded. I've gone to all of the trainings and all of the classes and really made sure that I know the contracts and the addendums and the amendments to give myself confidence whenever I do have a listing or a buyer, to make sure that I know what I'm talking about. And it helps me to talk to strangers and people that are not necessarily my sphere. I'm not from Texas, so everything has been pretty organic. I've lived here about 5 years. And then I have 2 kids as well. And kind of like Kimberly said, I don't like to tell my kids no based on money. I like to tell them no just because they ask for ridiculous things, but not because I don't have the money to give them to buy it or do whatever the thing is. And a lot of my business is in social media or referrals from people seeing me on social media. So I have a little bit of value to bring in that space.
Very good. How many of you, before we go to the next slide, how many of you have been in the business a year or less? And you guys online can put your hand up too if you so are inclined. Okay. Anybody 5 years or less? 10 years? So we have a lot of, it sounds like a couple new and a couple veterans, correct? Very good. How many of you have listings right now? Awesome. Where are we getting our listings?
Sphere of influence.
Sphere?
Clients.
Very good.
Sphere referrals. For sale by owner list.
Very good. What about you?
So we door knocked our neighborhood. So I'm new here. We just moved here. Louisiana, I mean, they know me, so it's a little different there, but we door knocked.
Yeah, very good. So listings all over the place. Of course, you'll always hear me refer back to the best place to get your business is from the people that already know you and trust you. My business at the beginning was much like, well, it wasn't social media, but I did a lot of door knocking and, mostly door knocking and calling and cold calling. And then now most of my business is repeat clients, referral, and Sphere. So kind of blends itself as you get into production and years of experience, that kind of turns. So some of what we're going to talk about today is what can you provide to your sphere of influence to talk to them about their equity and what's going on in the market, as well as for Tara, how can you use social media as a powerful tool right now? So Can I go over the overview?
Sure. So first we're going to talk about getting listings, best practices whenever we have listings, because we always want to represent our clients well. CMA, so one thing that I've been doing since Kimberly started productivity coaching with me is to do the CMAs on the spot. If I have the address beforehand, I do research in my own CMA, but I do it in front of them so that they're looking at the data at the same time that I am. She's going to talk about that a little bit more, but I can just have a listing appointment with anyone, anytime. And then wrapping up in our action plan. You got to put it in action.
Is there anything else that you want us to talk about and make sure we cover today? Anything that's on your mind?
Realistic packets.
Okay. That we have that kind of identified as a best practice.
Okay.
Very good. Okay. This one's yours.
So beliefs about listings, and I feel like beliefs about listings, beliefs about social media, whatever limiting belief you have, it's all kind of the same thing. It doesn't matter what it is that you're not believing in yourself for. It's usually that. So what comes to mind whenever you think limiting beliefs around listings? What are your own limiting beliefs?
What are the thoughts about listings in general right now?
Well, out in the market, it's they're hard to come by, and especially for a newer agent, I think. And Redfin being challenged by some of the discount brokers, and fortunately, the public had figured out on a mass that they could start negotiating our fees. Fortunately.
Okay, so I'm hearing listings in general, and then commissions and Redfin and competition.
Yeah.
Yep. And what else?
Right now, with the market being the way that it is, you know, it's kind of hard to break through to somebody that that is trying to do for sale by owner, because they just think, oh, well, you just put it out there and they're going to buy it. And that's not true right now. I mean, it's hard for us to get the value.
Yeah.
Or show the value of what we're doing.
Right. And one of our coaching clients, I'll talk to you about that after. One of our coaching clients is really going after for sale by owners right now. And he is having some success with it pretty quick. And of course, he's coming up to some of the challenges. I'm sure you are too. And so we've recently talked through some things that you can use and scripts that you can use around that. So I'll be happy to connect you with him after this. What else? And we can go to the next one, because maybe the current market is where I'm hearing most of you guys talk. Like, what is the perception of the market from buyers' perspective, sellers, agents?
I think for sellers, what I'm noticing, especially here more, is they're afraid of like, well, I don't have anywhere to go, right? That's the bigger thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they, just making sure that we say the right things, such as, yeah, okay, well, you can rent for 6 months or whatever it is. But when you've gone from owning to renting, not fun, you're like, oh. So I think that that's a big thing, helping them with the next game plan as we're in the tango here.
Yeah, I like that tango. Yeah.
So speaking of that, one thing that I've kind of been helping my clients do whenever I do suggest renting is I use smart apartment data to have some cases to send them. That way they're not only, it's scary to, like she said, to go from buying to renting or just trying to find a home in this market at all. Yeah. But we can provide them a little extra value if we're able to give them a list of complexes that are in their area and price range, so that they can at least see the future. Like, okay, well, I guess that is an option. So there are options.
And what was that called?
So a smart apartment data is the one that I use, but there are a few. Yeah. And they tell you how much you're going to get paid. I got paid on an apartment like $4,000 like one time. Yeah.
So is it called Smart Apartment?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to get off topic, but yes, okay. Yes, smart apartment data. Yeah.
Okay, and is it a website? Right.
Yeah, so it's software. So
okay.
It's kind of like the MLS for apartments. So it gives you everybody. It tells you what they're going to pay you, your commission. You can register your clients through there, but I suggest registering them separately through the complex.
Okay.
Yeah, and just you can talk to it gives you the phone number of the complex, and you can talk to those sales agents and. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, real quick, as we get into this conversation too, is what are some of the perceptions you guys are finding with sellers? Like, yeah, we're talking about buyers, but what are sellers' moods and opinions right now of the value of their home?
I think they're surprised. They're like, what, that they are going up that high.
Yeah. Has anybody come across the seller that thinks that they can they can ask for whatever they want?
Yeah.
That's more what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're inflated.
Yeah.
Their thoughts about what is of value is inflated, right?
Well, and what they're willing to do on negotiations of repairs and just a lot of things.
It's usually I don't need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then leasebacks, I'm seeing a lot of leasebacks that are like 3-month-long leasebacks, the exact 90-day minimum.
Right. Yeah. We went to a high-end house last week and kind of found this home because the agent puts it in the MLS system. Here are the terms that we want.
Oh, the offer letters. Yeah, the offer requirements. My favorite.
He completely turned my buyer off.
We've had that happen too.
Doing repairs, going 3-month lease back into cost of seller, and so the house is today still on the market.
Yeah. And so a lot of this that you guys are bringing up is things that we wanted to talk about and how to prepare a seller. And as the agent, our fiduciary responsibility to, yes, help them to get everything that they want and need, but also to help keep their perspective and know when some of the things that they're saying and expecting are actually a turnoff to the buyer. And yes, my clients did the same thing. They saw an offer request and was like, okay, never mind. Like, forget that. And there was some other verbiage that was in there, but it was offensive.
$2,000 option money.
Yes, I got that one too. I also got a request to resubmit above. Was it listed at 310 and they wanted only offers resubmitted above 350.
Yeah.
So yes, I've seen it all. And then of course, the last thing, in this current market that I'm sure you guys are dealing with is appraisers and having conversations around appraisals and setting your seller up for success in this market, knowing the appraisal situation. So jumping in, yes.
One of the things on the appraisals is appraisers being familiar with a particular market.
Yep.
Because there's such a high demand for appraisers, the appraisal management companies are sending appraisers that are not
from Austin. Yes.
So values aren't coming in where they typically would to take advantage of the last 90 days of sales.
Well, and I would make a note too, we're talking about this in our office and I don't have this in a slide, but it's perfect to say it here, is as a listing agent, yes, I would be preparing an appraiser packet for your appraiser, but I would also be looking at that market every day and looking for comps every day that close that you can add to that appraisal packet for them. That way, those people who are not familiar with our market do not undervalue your home simply because they don't have the knowledge. Where I'm seeing, and you guys can tell me what you think, McKinney feels like it's super out of control right now. I had a buyer look and we made 30 different offers and McKinney was just insane what we were seeing up there. And we had to get out of that market for that reason. So anything you guys can do as the listing agent to not just prepare the client, but also to prepare for the appraisal and doing everything you can on that end.
So I have a question because I'm loving the differences between Louisiana and here because like appraisal packages, we don't do that. My husband's an appraiser.
Yeah.
I don't think he's ever gotten one.
Well, most people don't do it here.
Oh, so is this a new thing?
Right.
It's rare.
It's not a new thing, but if you get into it a little bit, I mean, your experienced agents will know that maybe before this market, they might forecast that there could be an issue because either a lack of information or what appraisers generally would look at, and then you might want to throw something in there about updates that are done or things that are atypical about the property that they're not taking into account. But they were not common, I'd say, up until recently when we started really fighting it. But even now I'm finding that the listing agents aren't doing them or are kind of pushing back with our buyers because they don't think they need it because they know it's not going to break. Yeah, like, well, it's not going to matter what I do.
Right.
So I guess help me understand because am I doing the appraiser's job or like because
no.
So what is the point or what is in this packet? What's the point of
So a lot of times, I mean, you're just including, for example, like if I'm running like I'm doing a CMA for my client. So I already know what properties I'm using. So all we're really doing in that appraiser packet is putting together a list of the homes or the CMA or whatever of the homes we use to get that price, and then updating any homes that have closed since then that maybe when we did the original were pending or in option. The other thing is we tell the sellers any updates that you've done, go ahead and list them out. I even tell my sellers, if you can, be there at the appraisal so that you can point out the things that you've done that maybe not stand out as something that was added value since the house was purchased. And it's not necessarily doing their job as much as it is supporting the price that you have. I also, and this isn't always popular, but even though I work for the seller, I also believe it's my responsibility to keep the transaction on the rails, basically, which also means I'm advocating for the buyer's best price as well, especially if it's over, because that gap, if it's bigger than what anybody emotionally expected, can tank a deal no matter what kind of waiver you have.
You can also, in a multiple offer scenario, you can also give them information on the other offers that came in that you didn't select. And that sometimes also will back up data that's not exactly in the MLS, but that the market is actively reacting to that property, right?
And that is actually,
into account or not.
So we're sending them comps that they see too.
Yes, but you're showing them which comps you used for your price. There is a company that is sending out, and I showed you this too, didn't I? There is an appraiser company out of Vegas, and I forget what it's called, but they actually emailed me a link. I had to go onto the link. I told them how many offers I had. I submitted the appraisal, the CMA. I told them the feedback. They wanted to know the feedback that we got on any of the offers, why they did or did not submit. They didn't ask how much over the offers were, but they did ask how many we had over asking. And then anything else we knew about the neighborhood or houses that were under contract in the neighborhood that they obviously couldn't ask about. And on a house that I knew we would not have an appraisal issue, they were actually very generous with our appraisal price because of the amount of information that I was able to provide them. And at first I had the same reaction you did. I was like, am I doing this person's job? But at the end, my job isn't necessary. It doesn't matter what my job is when you get down to the nuts and bolts of it. My job is to help my client sell their house with as little interruption and problems as possible. And if I have to provide sales data and research, I'm more than happy to do that. Yeah.
I walked the appraiser and I meet him at the property. They, just to go face to face with them. And sometimes it hadn't happened in a while, but if there's a problem, they'll call you and say, I got a problem.
Yeah.
And I've also had somebody just go, and screw you.
Yeah. I tend to have a CYA policy, so I stay out of anything to do with the meeting the inspector or the appraiser, but I mean, everybody has a different way of doing it. So, yeah.
The fact of meeting them and giving all of that information, it helps get to our value of when we're with the seller, we get them from contract to close.
Yeah.
It's one thing to just get it under contract. We're helping ensure that the transaction closes.
Right.
That's when everyone gets.
And there's your value add for.
And there's the value add.
Yep. So where do we get listings? And I know you guys talked about a lot of this. Obviously our database first. What are some ideas you guys have around how do you get business from your database?
Stay in touch.
Stay in touch. Number one thing. Everybody, I don't know about you, but even in coaching agents, they're like, I have to pick up the phone. And yeah, that's still a thing. You pick up the phone, you text. We talk about quarterly calls, providing value, letting them know what's going on in the market, providing market valuations. I tell my newer agents, and I think I've told you this, reach out to your database and ask them if they want a free CMA because you're practicing your business. Like you're a newer agent, reach out to any of your friends. Can I run a free market analysis for you and share it with you to get some practice? And surprisingly, they're like, oh, wow, like really? Like that's what my house is worth? Yeah, you bet. So database is all about just loving on them and providing value.
You can reach out with buyer needs too. It's a great way to discover whether or not they're actually thinking of selling, or if they weren't, maybe they should. So.
Buyer needs is huge. I'm seeing that a lot on social media right now. Yep.
One of the things that I share with my coaching clients is to do this script as they're calling their friends, is to let them know that their team, which is this market center, has at least 150 families that they're trying to help find a home in DFW in the next 30 to 60 days.
Yep.
And that just means that half the agents in this office has one buyer client.
Right. We use that script too. We're very careful. We are careful, and I tell people this too, like, be careful that anytime you use language where it's like, there's a shortage or there's this, so that you don't inadvertently tell the seller not to sell, because then they're going to be on that list of buyers looking to buy. And it doesn't, it works in that.
That's not what we're saying. We're just saying that our team has this many families.
Yep.
Do you happen to know of anyone, which leads us to that conversation?
Yes.
Have you ever thought about selling your home?
Yep. And you have to be very clear on giving them that exact script, because if they add any additional information, like the market is so tough right now, this, and
It'll backfire.
It'll backfire. So yes. For sale by owners and expireds, obviously for sale by owners, there's a lot of them out there right now. They think they can do this job. And in some cases, maybe they can. What we're experiencing in our market right now is the agents we have actively working this is a lot of these for sale by owners are still getting a lot of agent calls and investor offers, and they're pricing based on the Zestimate. And in some cases, we're not seeing those estimates high. We're seeing them way underprice their homes right now. And so we're having some fun conversations around that. Expireds, we don't have anybody like working that one as much, but it's almost always going to be a pricing issue, right? So it's just getting on that. And then open houses, Tara does a lot of open houses.
I did 2 a week for a year. So now I have buyers who I met a year ago. They weren't ready whenever I met them, but now they are. And that's been a really big deal for my business.
Are you guys doing open houses?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So right now, unfortunately, we're seeing most of the agents send their clients to go look at open houses, and they're all represented, but we have at least 1 or 2 per open house that come in without representation. And so we tell our people, if 80 people come through the house and you get 1, like that's actually really good right now. Right. Just make sure you don't lose that 1.
One thing about open houses, if you're not leveraging command and using the landing pages as your sign-in sheet, then you are missing a huge opportunity. I just have a landing page set up with the data input form sitting on the counter, and I invite them in. Hey, by the way, when you're in the kitchen, will you sign in for me? They do it every time. It goes right into my command. I have a smart plan follow-up system where I text them that day, call them the next day, then they're on an auto email, and they never stop hearing from me.
And if they can't, because some of these, let's add to this, sometimes you have 80 people coming in and out of this home, so you can't get them all at that computer. You'll put a QR code throughout the house that leads to that landing page. She had shared this idea with me because I personally do not do a lot of open houses. This one has a very active baseball schedule, so my weekends are not always free. So the one time I did it, she goes, you know, you have to do this, set up this landing page. And I was so excited that all that data was sitting in my command at the end of my open house, and I did not have to go then do all this data entry and remember to grab this paper, that paper, add this, add that. And strangely enough, they were more willing to fill out that form than to fill out a piece of paper. I was not expecting that. I thought for sure Tara was crazy and this was not going to go well, but it actually worked out really well. They filled out more there on that computer form entry than I've ever had. So
you just have your laptop here?
I use an iPad.
iPad.
Yep.
It probably is a little bit more confidential, like nobody else could see.
Right.
That.
Well, they don't realize it's coming to us. They think it's just going out to some like internet world. But again, the QR code would be helpful so that you don't have everybody at one computer trying to log in. And if you,
so it's a landing page through Keller Williams Command. If you haven't done Marty Miller's 66-day challenge, do that and you can learn about landing pages and everything that Command has for us.
We can also, Jill, I'll have her record herself setting one up and we'll send it to you because that might be really easy.
There's an example of one.
Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome. Yeah. But Marty Miller has a great one. It's 3 minutes, but I'll do it.
And then social media, of course, I'll I'll let you talk on this one because I don't do as much social media as you do.
So social media started off as a huge limiting belief for me, which I think that that's true for a lot of people. We feel like whenever we put ourselves out there on the internet, people are going to judge us and they're going to say, oh, look at her. She wants me to see what she's eating every 5 minutes. And, you know, we have this thought that we're bombarding them and we're bothering them, but they're actually watching us for a reason. They only care so much about us anyway. They're looking at everybody's stuff. It's just staying top of mind. And, you know, I thought, I was like, man, like all these people, like they don't want to look at me, or they are looking at me, and they're both scary thoughts, you know? So it's, don't make it about yourself. Just come from a point of contribution and add value to them. And it could be recommendations for your favorite enchiladas or margarita. That's valuable information to someone.
Especially margaritas.
And for me, because all my family and people are in Louisiana, they want to know what's going on in Dallas. They want to see what you can get for this much money in this area, even though they may never look at a house in that area. They may hear someone saying something, oh, you know what? So someone messaged me one time, I did an open house in Wiley, and I had never even been to Wiley, and I had 3 messages from people in Louisiana. Hey, my cousin lives in Wiley. Hey, so-and-so lives in Wiley. Hey, and you know, and then we became Facebook friends.
And that too, I would say, you know, I wasn't real big on doing the open house walkthroughs or you know, live walkthroughs. But what potential sellers also see, it's just like whenever you hold an open house and somebody sees your signs everywhere and they're like, oh, that agent must be really busy. Like, look at all these signs. Social media does the same thing for us that a sign in a yard does. They see you doing a walkthrough for a seller, a live walkthrough, and getting all these leads. And so potential sellers see that and go, well, I want them to do that for me too. I have always posted, you know, congratulations to my buyer or my seller. And I, you know, put the happy picture out there, like we closed, whatever. I used to always think everybody was annoyed by those because, again, I have some limiting beliefs around social media too. And one of my clients goes, so are you going to take pictures of me in front of my house and put my story out there too? Because I really want you to. And I'm like, wait a second, hold on. Like, you want that? And so everybody, I used to think they didn't want to be tagged. They didn't want that information out there, and come to find out they actually really do. They just want it to come from us instead of bragging about themselves, because for whatever reason, they think it makes them like social media famous as well, which is, again, weird perceptions around social media. But it's free marketing. And as much as I have limiting beliefs around it, I'm really pushing towards that. So that goes into our next slide too, is these value for sellers. Will you? Thank you. Go one more slide. I'm going to come to this one first. So one of the things that we've been doing for our coaching clients, and I'm going to move this up here for a sec so that you guys can see that. So one of the things we've talked about in our leadership meeting the other day was this perception of the market. And I don't know about you, but have you watched the news lately and heard the news and all the crazy things that are being said to the market on radio, commercials, and the news about the market? And I just shake my head and I'm like, what are they doing? Why are they saying this? Like, first of all, that's not accurate. And then we hear our competitors talking about, you know, free listings and we can cut you a deal, whatever, and talking about how bad agents are for getting their full commission. And so one of the things that we talked about in our leadership meeting was our responsibility as agents to correct that narrative. And how many agents do you see actually putting data out there? We have it. Gary talks about overwhelming our customers with information so that they don't feel like we're holding back or keeping secrets, but yet we are the ones with the marketing information and we're not sharing it. And so all of our coaching clients, I put these out on Monday and we blast them everywhere on our social media and talk about them because it's our goal over the next month or 2 months to correct the narrative and make sure that we're the ones with the data, we're the ones providing the information, and we are the ones educating people. So we look at MLS data, which all of this just came from MLS for those counties over 7 days. So when we post this next Monday, we'll talk about not only what the numbers are, but what the differences are from week to week and what that means for the market at the end of the month, like what the month changes were. So we'll have some conversation around that, and we post it. We'll probably do some Facebook Lives on that as well. Being the market expert for the neighborhood, it's really funny. Everybody's like, man, DFW is selling, it's so hot. And then you look at data for a specific neighborhood and it's not turning at all. And you're like, okay, well, sorry guys, this doesn't apply to you. So knowing specific neighborhood data going into those listing appointments, a lot of them are also using showing time. Do you guys know how to get on showing time and look at where people, what price ranges people are looking at? Okay, good. A lot of people didn't know you could do that. And so that's finally starting to come out. And there's a lot of conversation around, are we priced right? Are there people looking in this price range? Do we need to bump up? Do we need to bump down? Also, buyer migration patterns. Do you guys know that you can go on command and look at the referral tab? And you can actually see where most of the referrals are coming from and going out of from Texas? Do you know that?
Yeah.
Cool. So whenever we talk to our sellers about how we're going to market for them, which is the slide I'm going to come back to, being able to run targeted Facebook ads like what Tara does and say, we are targeting this state, and this state, because we know that this percentage of population are coming here. Do you think other agents are having those conversations with them? They're not. Because unfortunately, even though we're all in KW and we all have access to the same information, not all KW agents are even having these conversations. And then of course, days on market and price. That one's a given. But understanding in the specific neighborhoods, days on market compared to, you know, pricing and what price warrants, how many days on market and so on. That one's a fun one to actually do in person and see their faces. What do you think about this? How many of you guys do market stats?
Not like this. This is good.
Yeah. And we made this on Canva, just so you know. Canva's great.
Slide deck with us?
Huh?
Will you share your slide deck with us?
I'm happy to. If you follow me on social media, it's just Kimberly Brunk Boales. All that stuff's on there, and anything I post, you're welcome to take. But yes, I can send you that. Any questions about that?
There's some, Command has a function that you don't plug in. I saw that and I did it once. Might want to do it again. But it's
the designs.
Yeah. It's really slick.
It is, and it takes 2 seconds.
It does.
Yeah, I can spend all day on Canva trying to get it right, but if I do it on command, it's quick. I know. I'm a technology person, but I'm not necessarily like a lover of spending time on these types of things. So I've learned Canva and I'm more comfortable with Canva than Command Design. So I stick with that. But designs, if I don't want to go and create something, Command Designs is definitely a much faster preferred method, because somebody sits around in Austin all day, every day, and this is their background is marketing. So go back one. Yeah. So best practices, what are some things that we need to do to be prepared for a listing?
Show up on time.
Right.
Or 5 minutes early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I mean, walk in the door with your market analysis completed, all your listing papers done. Places where just be able to walk in the door and walk out with the listing.
Yeah. I also tell my people, and I've always done it, I always bring a sign and lockbox with me, because I'm walking out, I'm putting that sign in the yard that day. And as long as I have it with me, we're all on the same page. Even if I'm interviewing against other agents, I have it with me.
I'll leave it at the door.
I'll leave it at the door for you. Yep.
You just put it in the front yard and then knock on the door.
I have not done that one, but I can try that one.
Right.
I'll get out there in my heels and put the sign in. Or put it in the yard and take a picture. Hey, I'm in the yard. Your yard's ready. I'm at your front door. So be prepared. I know that this seems like an obvious one, but there's so many people I feel like are not prepared. And sometimes that is, going into the pre-qualification scripts. I'm telling all my agents, especially on for sale by owners, they have to ask, are you interviewing any other agents? with for sale by owners, they didn't even think to ask that. And they kept losing these for sale by owners. Oh, they told us they were going to wait. And then all of a sudden I see it on. Did you ask? Did you ask? Are you interviewing any other agents? He goes, no, I didn't. I said, probably would have been, helpful to ask. So being prepared, of course, is doing those pre-qualification scripts and just knowing what it is that they want, what their expectations are, their timing and all of that. We have all of our listing. This is new to me. I used to do all of my listing and buyer presentations paper. I did it all that way. And I felt like even though I'd been in the business forever, it was still an event to get ready and to have the print off this and do that and prepare this and whatever. And with COVID, actually, when I started doing a lot of Zoom listing presentations and buyer presentations, I had to create something digital to be able to do on Zoom like this. And so then I was like, okay, well, this is done. And now that I finally 7 years later have it digitally, I wonder what this looks like in person. If I actually take my presentation digitally in person, and I was never a fan of that, mostly because my phone did not have a hotspot until recently. That's a whole other story. But now that it has a hotspot and I can do it, yeah, here I go. But what I have found is having it digitally and always having it ready. I can get a call and somebody say, hey, can you come meet with me like in the next hour? Yeah, I absolutely can. I've got it all ready. Let me just get my car and head that way. The only thing I maybe have to do is get on DocuSign real fast and get some things ready. And I can leave it on DocuSign and not bring paperwork in that case. So it's uncomfortable for me to do it that way because it's still so new to me. However, it's actually playing out better with them than me bringing paper, which I was totally against, but it's actually working out really well. Zoom and COVID changed the game without me expecting it to change, and it did. So
approve it?
I didn't approve it. It didn't ask me my opinion, but I'm okay with it because I think it's made our business. I think it's definitely saved me a lot of time.
Forced me into the new world.
It definitely has. So pre-listing packets. How many of you guys use a pre-listing packet? You do? What do you love about a pre-listing packet and how does it help you?
Well, it differentiates you from your competition because the majority of people don't have it. And a lot of people say, what are you going to send? What are you going to bring over? And also, when I walk in the door, I modeled Jackie Travis. Who? Travis. No, not Travis. Jackie Ellis in Florida.
Oh, okay, I know who you're talking about, yeah.
And so I hybrided off of what she did. And so if you walk in the front door and paperwork's filled out, game over. If you walk in the front door, it's still sitting there. It's like your conversation changes. Yeah. At that point, but it has been a real, it expedites your time inside the house. You just have to dot the I's, cross the T's, and then get the contract signed at that point. Yeah, at that point, you're only negotiating price and. Yeah. So
what are you asking you said whenever it's filled out?
Well, I have a page that says, this is your fun homework. So what do you like about your house? What do you like about your community? That helps me with the marketing. And then not so fun homework is your seller's disclosure notice. I have a page in there that says knowing more about you and on other birthdays and all that stuff that they like to do. What else? Some other forms, I'd have to go back and look. But I just have 10 of them sitting there. And what you just said about being digital, I've got 10 listing packets sitting there and pre-listing packets that I can walk out the door at any time with. Yeah. So it was when I walk in the door and things scattered out across the floor, and there's paper everywhere. I know that they've opened it up, and it's really expedited a whole bunch of things. Yeah. So can I throw an idea out there? Because I know Tara's got the same idea I do. You want to be challenged on that? Sure. So not necessarily challenged, however, because of COVID and people being weird about dropping stuff off. A lot of people started going digital on the pre-listing information. So I don't know if you guys know in Command, you can go in and you can do the pre-listing. There's like a pre-listing packet and designs that's all about the process. And I love that. Tara takes exactly what you do, the information about the family, and she actually sends that out as a Google form. You want to tell them about that?
on both listing and buyer side?
Yeah, so exact same questions. I have a buyer data form and a seller data form, and I have those questions out, and it just, they check it or they do their short answer, long answer. Some answers are required, some are not. And I can put links in there if I want to. I can also add, and I'm the least tech person ever, so don't think that you can't do this because I didn't think I could do it. You can add any photos from your presentation or a little about you thing, whatever, and they just go through and they fill out the form digitally, and then it comes to you the second they're finished.
And the thing that I like about that, because I used to do what you do until she challenged me on it. Well, now she knows before she even gets there if they fill it out and whether or not, how that's going to go. There's another agent I talked to a couple days ago that said, I might actually even cancel the appointment if they haven't filled it out before I go. Because if they haven't filled it out before I go, I already know they're not hiring me.
We have
I'm throwing ideas out there. I don't necessarily subscribe to all of them.
Tommy says that's a challenge.
I'm showing up too.
We have a Google form, so we do it too for the buyer and seller. And it was funny because my husband created it last year. Maybe, I don't even remember if it was right before pandemic or not, but I was like, this is too much. Like, you're crazy. But I'm like, oh, this is good. And I just text it, honestly.
Yep.
I have a whole script and I just text it to him. And it's true. I might not meet with him because it helps me, buyer or seller. I know why I'm meeting with you. And I'm like, oh, I know this is what you want in the house. Or I know even on the seller side, this is what's going on. This is what you owe, whatever. I didn't add the extra. Maybe I need to go look at the other pre-list.
The extra is not necessary.
To see if it'll be helpful, you know? Mm-hmm.
I find it, Charles is my coach. Tommy's like my uncle that has been dragging me around to everything that he's doing. So I've sat in on one of his presentations, and I find it to be helpful because as a newer agent, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So, you know, I'll get distracted, a little squirrel, you know, real quick and at home. So having that presentation, which I'm trying to build now, I hope is going to keep me on track and focused throughout the presentation.
So we have a listing presentation we do have a listing presentation for that to keep us on track. Absolutely. And then some of the questions and that just helps us know like what the conversation is going to be about before we get there rather than learning it right when we get there. And then do you drop it off or do you email it or how do you get them the pre-listing packet?
I'm dropping off.
Okay.
And I'm not dropping off, I can go and get the car and leave.
So question, if they're like I do, like I had a listing out in Forney, would you drive all the way down to Forney to drop it off?
Might have a delivery service taken to them.
Okay.
Or
just
I
curious.
would probably refer that to another agent out in Rockville.
Sure.
Unless I sold it to them. But yeah, it is a part. It's part of the process.
Yeah.
And I tell them you can expect this thing to show up, and they said, "Well, what's in it?" I tell them they said this really help our timing.
Yeah.
Expedite our time.
Do you guys have the sellers? Do you guys do Seller Shield? Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that thing.
What is this?
What is that?
Seller Shield. So instead of, I've done it both ways. I tend to do Seller Shield now. Do you guys have it for the office? Okay. So Seller Shield, you go online as the agent. It's a service that the office, I believe, pays for. You put in your client's address, name, and email, and then they send it out. And they sit there and fill out the seller's disclosure online with this seller's, it's like almost like legal advice as they go through it. So if it's like a question box, like, what does this mean? Instead of calling me and saying, Kim, what does that mean? And I'm like, really shouldn't be answering this question for you. They can click this button and the legal answer comes up. And then at the end, they have the option of having a legal coverage on it in case the buyer at any point comes and sues them, they would have legal coverage on it.
Nice.
We started using it more often recently, and part of it was because of the pandemic and trying to find a way to send the sellers a disclosure to them so they could be working on it without having to go paper or PDF. More and more people said, can I do this digitally? And so then I remembered, because Bob had been talking about it for a while, that we have this service. We tried it out on a few people and it's worked pretty well. Not everybody. Some people resist it.
Disclosure batch just filled out and it's
Well, the thing that I like the best about it is because the seller's disclosure is not the easiest document to fill out. I mean, even as a seller of my own home, I was like, I don't know how to answer that. It walks them through legally, gives them advice on how to answer certain questions and takes all of that pressure off of me to say, I can't really answer that for you.
Oh, okay.
And it guides them through, like, if I gave you any advice on what to do with sellers, like that would be my best advice. From your broker standpoint, because it also has that Legal Shield stamp on it, you've also given your broker a leg up if there's ever any kind of legal action against them. That Legal Shield logo changes the whole game for the broker in the argument.
The opportunity has been given to them to have coverage, whether they like to use it or not, to pay for that coverage. And they pay at closing. So an invoice goes and just pay that there. It's fairly reasonable. But the main thing, yeah, I mean, I remember, I think it was Bob at some point said, yeah, you should walk with salad tongs, the seller disclosure over to them and set it down and then walk away. Meaning the liability of helping them fill that out, that's their knowledge, right? That's the idea behind it. Yes, you do have to assist in how people walk down. But from a broker standpoint, from a liability standpoint, you kind of don't want to take on too much liability of, well, my agent said to fill it out this way. I didn't. So Seller Shield takes that on. You don't have to do that or kind of stick your nose in there, trying to be helpful. Yeah. And then, yeah, it just comes to you too.
I just usually just fill it out for them.
I know, it's like, just give me the
Okay, sorry. So you're talking about Seller Shield?
Yeah. Yeah. So and now I took that out of the pre-listing packet. I send them to them, I send them the form, and I kind of have an idea of walking into that conversation, what we're talking about. Number 5, so customer focused value. We talk a lot about in coaching, there's and I see it sometimes in the pre-listing packets on command. It's like, promote yourself and talk about what you do and why I this and why I that. And we talk a lot about this in coaching, that yes, it's important for the seller to know what you've accomplished, but at the end of the day, they really want to know what you're going to do for them, not all about you and how amazing you are and how much you can talk. And so we really make sure that in our coaching program, we talk about, if you need to tell them something about you that's all about me, try to turn that into, how does this about me help you? And at the end of the day, it's all about being customer focused. You guys all know that. Sometimes I have to be reminded of that, and we all do. Right now, I see a lot of people talking about, I've sold this many houses, and I've done this, and I've done that. And it's easy to go up against a listing agent that's done nothing but talk about themselves. And we'll use another brokerage as an example, that a lot of these agents are being trained to talk about, well, I've done this, and this. And then I can come in and say, yeah, but how does that help you? Like, yes, that's great. They've done those things, but what's important to you? What do you want? What do you need? And so it's kind of easy to use what other people are doing against them in the moment. I think the three-letter company that's doing that.
And see, I could have that problem in a way, because kind of like what you're saying, like, I didn't have any listings here yet, so they're like, well, how do big Texas, right? I had to deal with that in the beginning, versus it's like, but I know the game,
Yeah.
I know the business, I know the work, even though there are differences, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Question-based consults, and I'm sure most of you guys do that. Some of the old scripts, I remember being in bold, and it was all about talking about talk. And occasionally the customer would get to talk. And that always drove me crazy. So I did a lot more research into question-based learning and just how to do a consult that's mostly about the client and building rapport through questions. And so most of our consults, again, we do have to talk about price, and we do have to talk about the market. We are learning to build those questions in and let the customer talk a whole lot more than we are. And at the end of the day, you've been in those conversations where you ask people questions about themselves, and they just They talk, and they're like, oh my God, you're the most amazing person. I don't know anything about you, but I love you. Because people ultimately love to talk about themselves. And I learned this the most when we were on vacation. Some of the travel, you'd be on excursions or whatever, and the travel people would do a really good job of asking my husband a question. And he'd just talk. And then he'd go, man, I really like that guy. This is the best excursion ever. I'm like, you talked the whole time. Do you know anything about him other than his name? Well, no, I don't. And that everybody works that way though. And then we talked about be the market expert. And for interest of time, I'm going to skip that activity. But what data do you think is important for people to know right now? What's the most important thing do you think to be sharing?
Market stats.
Yeah, if you use this, one thing you can do, do you guys use stories like Facebook stories or Instagram stories? Some of you, okay, if you do, one thing you can add to this when you put it up there is you can put a question box that says what market or what neighborhood, what city do you want me to run for you? And leave that box open so that even though that market data is out there for the county, if they want specific city information, they can engage with you that way. Hi. So I just encourage you adding some kind of call to action or some way for them to reach out to you on that. Go ahead. Do we have time? I know you guys have another class at 3 o'clock. How many of you have ever done a live CMA with your clients?
No.
We all know how to run CMAs?
Yes.
Yeah. So what we do, and I won't do this for the sake of time. We've all done this before. And we've walked in with the CMA, right? The printout, whether you use, how many of you use the cloud CMA?
Well, RPR.
Okay. And then anybody use just the quick CMA? That's my favorite, it's the quick CMA. Cloud CMA, I never have used that. We also found that Zillow gets that data, so we definitely stopped using the cloud CMA. Because Zillow actually owns Cloud CMA, if you didn't know that. So whenever you run a Cloud CMA and put that address in there, they're actually contacting your listing. You didn't know that? They bought them out like a couple of years ago and we started immediately seeing that show up. So Cloud CMA is great for a lot of pictures. And that's ultimately why we use it, right? So that we can put pictures in front of our clients when we're talking about the CMA. So the question then became, how do we put those pictures in front of them without using Cloud CMA? And so then we started talking about, instead of doing it at home, and yes, I still do a quick CMA, and I have to know what number I have in mind. And I have to know what their goal is, because I have to know if I'm having a hard conversation or if I get to be the most amazing human being and tell them that they're going to get a whole lot more than what they thought. So I do take a few minutes to run that CMA ahead of time. But one of the things that people have, and you feel this way too, one of the biggest concerns that the customer has about realtors is that we're holding the cards all the time, that we're keeping information from them. Gary's talked about this a lot, that part of the reason Zillow is so successful is they just data, information. And the way we used to approach real estate is, as agents, we would hold the information, they had to come to us with it, for it, to get it, to access it. And it created this mistrust. Everybody know where I'm at? Are we following? So when I started thinking about how I was approaching CMAs, sometimes I would get people that were on board. We liked your price. This is great. You know, we would come to the price together, but it was always based on the one sheet that, again, I always use the quick CMA because I'm a DC, just so you know. And I love data. And for me, that was the easiest way to look at data. But at the end of the day, they're looking at data on a piece of paper. And my C personalities loved it, but there was always that question of, what is she not showing me? My eyes didn't really care. They just wanted to talk. Like, as long as I talked, they were good. And so I kept asking myself, like, how can I do this in front of them? And I had a client, she was a past client, and I said, hey, do you mind? I'm going to do something different. I brought the CMA and I'm going to talk to you about this, but can I try something with you? Can I do a live CMA with you and actually do for you what I would do in my office? She's like, yeah, great. So first thing I did is I pull up the tax record, because of course we start with the tax record. I want to know like what it's listed as taxes. I want to know what they paid in taxes. but I look down at the bottom at the AVM, that was called?
Yeah.
The AVM value, that was called. And I don't necessarily use that as anything other than, okay, if my price is not within here, I got to do some research. If it falls within here, I know I might most likely be close. Okay, so I'm not using that to set prices. I'm just using it to gauge accuracy. When you guys go in and you put your CMA in and you're running it, what bracket do you put as far as square footage? For a comparable. So whenever you're putting in square footage, do you go up 200, 300 down? What are you using as a comparable range?
200 square feet.
Yeah.
200 up or down? Okay. Anybody doing anything different?
All in size. Yeah, a little bit. I mean, definitely if there's not enough data, but I kind of start broad and then I narrow down. I'm starting narrow and broadening out, but I like to see personality. I like the big stuff and then to get into what I want.
I do that to see if, and then if I have a million houses that come back, I get a little bit tighter. Do you think our clients, do you think the general population knows this? No. They do not. When they're like, oh, my neighbor down the street sold their house and da-da-da-da. Okay, well, that person's house is 500 square feet bigger than yours, so it's not even a comparable. Well, what's a comparable? What does that mean? So by doing this live CMA and by showing them like the bracket that we put in and what the industry uses, putting in the neighborhood and looking, I'm not looking at the house in the neighborhood across the street. I'm looking in this neighborhood. They don't understand that we go back 90 days and why we would do that. So we show them that we put that information in. Some people may go in and actually put in like the bedrooms and bathrooms. I don't. I pretty much am only using square footage, neighborhood.
If it's a 1-story or 2-story.
And 1-story or 2-story. They also don't understand that we don't compare 1-stories and 2-stories. I'm doing all this in front of them. Yeah. And as I'm doing this, I've taken all of the like, what do agents really do? And how do they get this price? And what are they basing on this? So I make them a part of the process. And then we talk about why we use actives, of course, because I've heard recently people are not using pendings, and that kills me. I don't know why. I tell them actives are your competition, solds. You guys not, I'm talking about other agents that I'm seeing on chat boards are not using pendings, and I'm going, that's just weird. That's the market right now. And so we talk about, and we have a conversation about why we use active pendings and solds and what that means. And then we start looking at each of the homes. And for those of you cloud CMA people, the pictures are right there. Well, actually, you can look at it live right there. You can click through, listed at this price, it sold at this price, it had multiple offers. And so we're looking at all that. And then we start talking about pricing strategy. I'm sure you guys have all do this, like here's the top of the market, here's where the market is. And then if you want to be aggressive and you like multiple offers and you want the opportunity to choose, maybe we have this strategy just slightly below the market. That strategy is a little different right now because of the market we're in, but we talk about all that. And then we're sitting there and we're arriving at the decision together with real information rather than a piece of paper. Now, where this comes in huge, and I think did you use this? Maybe it's all 100. I know you've used it. I think it was all 100. One of our other coaches, an agent said, or the seller said, well, this other agent said I could get, it was like $20,000 more. And he's like, well, that's really interesting because you're looking at the same data I am. We're looking at the same information. Where do you think they got that other 20,000? And this was before we got into this market. This was right before this crazy market hit. And so then I had already talked to him about training him. Is that agent, that's really interesting, that agent's going to offer that price. Is that agent offering to buy your house at that price if it doesn't sell for that? And he did ask that question. He ended up winning the listing over another agent that had promised more because he went through this process and he took all of the mystery out of it and made them a party to the decision. Not just the decision about price, but the whole investigation process. And he did. He actually ended up selling it for quite a bit more in multiple offer. But it was because he had it priced right in the first place. What was your client's feedback on that?
It was, it's kind of very similar. Someone else overpromised them And we looked at the data and I asked them, I said, well, why do you think someone would say that they can get you 20,000 more than what the data is saying? I said, well, maybe they're just lying to get the listing, but I let them self-discover that.
Would you agree that's a whole lot easier to let them self-discover that when everything's in front of them?
Oh, yeah.
Anybody willing to try that? Yeah. For sure. And then of course, it always works out well. The Zestimates, of course, using this information to talk about Zestimates and how Zillow actually gets their prices. It's based on, you know, something other than actual data. You can also then use, once I have that, I do make sure that my price fits within with the tax record. And I look at that before I get there. I don't do that in front of them. But if my price is super outside of that, I'm calling another agent and saying, hey, will you run your own independent pricing of this property for me? What did I miss or whatever? So I'm using this tax record just to see if I'm outside of the window. Yeah.
So you finish this process and the numbers sit there in a normal market, the seller says, I ain't selling that house for that price.
I have not had that happen.
Okay.
Doing it this way. I've had people tell me something very different and the news that I had for them was not great. It wasn't like devastating, but it wasn't great. And they're like, man, I just really don't like that price. In fact, it's one that I've got under contract now. He point blank said, I really don't like that price. I wanted to sell for 400. And you're telling me 375. And I said, well, actually, sir, I'm not telling you 375. I'm showing you what the market is saying. This isn't coming from me. And do I think that you can get 400? I think it's always a possibility. I'm never going to tell you you can't get that. But anybody who's getting multiple offer right now usually start by pricing it right. And I was fortunate enough in this situation to have a home in there right in front of us that had priced $40,000 too high and sat on the market for 36 days in a days on market was 7. It was like 3 to 7. And he watched and had to see this price go down. And I showed him the history of the price changes before it sold. And then it actually sold for $10,000 less than the list price after it was adjusted. So I told him, you're welcome to list for more, but this is what's going to happen. Do you want to go up in price with multiple offer or down because somebody thinks your house isn't worth what you're asking? And that was all it took. I could not have had that conversation with a single piece of paper in front of me.
Okay. So how much time did we talk? How long is your listing presentation?
This takes about 15 minutes. So my listing presentation, and I'll show you it in just a second. We have a PowerPoint presentation we use that all of our agents use for coaching. It takes, with conversation, about an hour.
Okay.
It can be done in less, but I tend to talk and they tend to talk and we tend to build rapport.
Do you find challenges with different age brackets as to your presentation? Like you walk in there with a digital presentation to a 75-year-old man, is he going to say?
It works the best with that age.
Seriously?
Yeah.
They can't see or something. What's
I did not think it was going to work. I had an older couple retired. I didn't know how it was going to go. Their son actually referred it to me, and he is in real estate. And I point blank asked him, I said, this is up to you. I can do the digital version of this, or we can do this old school. And they were like, let's do it digital. Let's see what you got. And our PowerPoint presentation it's very white-ish screened. Like there's a lot of screen space and not as much writing. So it was a little bit easier to follow.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I give people the option though. Almost everybody's saying digital.
Okay.
Yep. Hold on, we have 2 questions. Oh, sorry, I didn't see your comment. Depends on the size of the home. So that must have been the square footage question. Okay, so wrapping it up. So we've talked about how to get listings in all the various different ways, some tools to use. We talked about different best practices and then eventually the live CMA. What'd you get? Like, what ahas did you have? What are you going to try? What are you going to do? What are you going to change?
Cloud CMA.
Stop doing cloud CMA, I'm sorry.
The landing pages for the open house have them sign in. Love that idea. And the QR codes throughout the house. Go directly to command. That's fantastic. Love the live CMA. And then I still haven't looked at the command pre-listing packets. It's always been on my to-do list to see what they have to offer there to use those and get them digitally sent out with the Google Forms. Load all that.
It'll probably be great for those of you folks that have a lot of experience, because the ones that I found, you know, a lot of the bullet points are basically talking a little bit about yourself. I've done this, I've listened to this. And so I'm like, oh, okay, so I'll just delete this page.
I do delete that page too.
Yeah. Okay, so presentation went down to 3 pages because I have nothing to talk about. Perfect.
Actually, build on what he said, the Facebook ads to other states. I've thought about that.
Yeah, you can even pull up command and show them when you go to the referral tab, like it'll show you all the feeder patterns.
Yeah.
And they are just amazed at seeing that.
You can't do that. That's true. I'm gonna get Tommy digital.
I love the
I got a microwave last week.
You got a microwave, yay.
Don't use it.
I did my best cooking.
What were you saying?
Oh no, I love the live CMA. I mean, that's pretty spooky. Have to get a tablet. I don't care around with the old.
Yeah.
Use my iPad.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Let me show.
Hotspot now.
Yeah.
So while while you guys, I have a challenge for you. I always like to leave with some kind of action item. So I challenge you to write down for a minute, and I'll pull up my presentation for the listings. What is a 24-hour action item, something that you can go and put into practice or research or do within the next 24 hours? What is something you can do for the week? And then last, what would you implement by the end of the month or within the next month? So I would love to get your thoughts on that, or have you write something down so that you don't just learn today, but you actually go and take something and put it into practice. And then, can I share the digital presentation for listings, Jay, or for what I just showed you? Can you give me some direction on that?
Listings.
For the listings, yes. Let me pull that up while you guys are doing that.
Thank you.
Rid of doing all this stuff live on the spot gets a little bit challenging. Where's the drive? Let me move that. That again.
Thank you. I have to have it 2 o'clock.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll send you guys whatever.
You're a young guy.
So this is what our coaching program gets. I'll show this to you real fast. Obviously, I'm not going to present it, but we give all of our coaching agents this to use. That's part of our coaching advantage for them, is that they have everything built out and systems built out for them to use. And myself and a couple other agents put this together from our years of working. So we have them talk about preparing the home. There's one screen missing. We do actually have an agenda for them at the front, like we're going to talk about this, and this, just like we started here. Preparing their home and all the different things. So we have a slide and they have some conversation points here. They talk about professional photography and the importance of that. And then sometimes you can pull up on your phone or even on MLS, you can actually see agents, you can point out this is phone pictures. This is digital, like professional pictures, and they get to see that. We use this slide, even though I don't personally like this slide, our clients actually love this slide. And instead of telling them what's on it, I kind of just let them peruse over it, and I ask them like, what stands out to you? And we kind of let them just use this as a self-discovery. Again, I wanted to take this out, but every time I go over it, this was one of the favorite slides. What?
I actually presented that slide to a buyer as well one time whenever I was talking about, I was talking about open houses and people use real estate agents, and they said, so one of the, recently, they said, so I noticed this house didn't have a sign, and whenever we talked before, you mentioned that a lot of people find their homes on a sign, and there wasn't a sign in that yard, and it had been on the market for a long time, and my clients noticed that.
We talk about, of course, our digital positioning within KW. We talk about the relationship that we have with Google and Facebook and how when we run ads through our programming, we're targeting way more than any other company running it themselves. Extended market reach, social engagement. We talk about the open house plans, their commitment or our commitment to service. We talk about our skills as negotiators and what that looks like. We do give them an overview of the contract to close process, but if they use the pre-listing packet, we actually have these things spelled out for them ahead of time with all the descriptions. We talk about COVID precautions, part of that being the seller's disclosure and just being able to do everything digitally. I will add, I actually send them, I didn't discuss this, but I actually send them the listing agreement because I used to like to have it signed in person on paper. I actually have it ready on DocuSign and I send it to them right there and they sign it digitally right there. And that has helped me when we get offers and all of a sudden they have like all these like digital problems. By having them sign the buyer's rep or the listing agreement digitally while I'm sitting there, we are able to identify any technology problems and work through that while I'm sitting right there so that we can work quickly when it's time to actually sign an offer. Because I don't know about you, but I've had too many people have digital issues when we're like trying to make an offer and I'm like, oh my gosh, like how can we not figure this out? Our listing promise, and then we pretty much, we use this slide occasionally. We use this, these are at the back. We only use these other slides if the conversation is going in that direction. Did you take my ability to, I don't know, it just froze. Maybe it is. No, I think there was one more, but maybe it was. But that's what we do. And we have that already. Oh, there was a Matterport and something else. But that's what we do, is we have that all ready for them. And then they can add in anything that they feel like they need to add. Any questions for me?
They get that from us as a part of Ignite, the whole listing packet from Command to utilize that and customize it. So.
Yep. And that's yeah, we just, sometimes they do or don't do that. And so with our coaching program, it's just easier. But having it all on your computer and on a drive that can easily be accessed allows for us to do listings quickly. So Seller Shield, use that. Stop using Cloud CMA.
Yes.
Try the command landing pages. And if you guys need anything else, Jill has our email. It was at the beginning too, but if you have any questions, let us know. And I'll talk to you too. Anything else?
Great job. Thank you, ladies.
Thanks. Yeah. Got a little nervous doing this right before Gene Rivers next Thursday, but hope you guys got some value out of that. You're welcome, guys. It was nice to meet you online, sort of.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry about my phone, y'all. It's broken. The volume off button